Good morning, everybody. This session, today's session and tomorrow's, is on meditation. Meditation in Advaita Vedanta. So to give some context, what is spiritual practice in Advaita Vedanta? We all know spiritual practice in Advaita Vedanta means three things: listening, reasoning, meditating, right? Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. So these are the words used in Advaita Vedanta. Shravana means hearing or listening. Manana means reflecting. And Nididhyasana is a special term in Advaita Vedanta which basically means meditation. To understand what role meditation has in Advaita Vedanta, let's first quickly take a look at Shravana and Manana. The primary practice in Advaita Vedanta is actually Shravana, is what we call hearing. And this hearing, it means actually a study of Vedanta. It's not just listening to the talks. You listen to the talks and you study the text systematically over a long period of time. All this is comprised of Shravana comprises all of this. Traditionally, when you try to understand what Shravana or hearing is, it's actually the texts of Advaita Vedanta, the Upanishads. They are texts. So when it comes to teaching, comes to you in the form of text, one must know how to extract the meaning of the texts. So what I'm doing now is going a little bit deep into what is meant by Shravana in classical Vedanta. We normally don't talk about that, but it's good to know what they actually do. So the problem is that here you have these Upanishads, which are the root texts of Advaita Vedanta. If you say, what is Advaita Vedanta? I remember when we first started learning Vedanta with an introductory text, Vedanta Sara, when we were brahmacharis, novices in the training center. Definition of Vedanta. You know how Vedanta is defined? Vedanta Nama Upanishad Pramanam. We have to memorize these definitions. Vedanta is the source of knowledge called the Upanishads. Straight, there's no compromise there. What is Vedanta? Of course, it means Advaita Vedanta is the source of knowledge called the Upanishads. So you have got these Upanishads texts and other texts too. But the source texts of the Upanishads, how do you get the meaning out of it? What I mean is, these are Sanskrit texts in Vedic Sanskrit. Very, very old. And so how do you know what they mean actually? Is there any systematic way of extracting the meaning? But they're very profound. And they are like, as the Swami said, finger pointing to the moon. So one must try to interpret it properly. One must try to see what it's pointing at. So there is a process of interpreting a text. And again, all these things are not unique to Advaita Vedanta. In fact, they have been very liberally borrowed from other systems, from the Purva Mimamsa system, which is that school of philosophy specializes in interpreting Vedic texts. So Advaita Vedanta borrows their techniques. These techniques are what are today called hermeneutics. It's a branch of philosophy of the philosophy of language, where you have a set of techniques which help you to extract the meaning of a text. So you have a few pages of a text. What is the point of it? In Sanskrit, Tatparya Nirnaya. What is the point of these texts? What are they pointing towards? How do you know? Is there any system? So there is a system. In Advaita hermeneutics is the process of extracting meaning from a text. There are 6 steps. I'll just quickly indicate them, because to explain the 6 steps of Advaita hermeneutics will be more than one class itself, or several talks. But just quickly indicate them. The 6 steps are, in Sanskrit, Upakrama Upasanghara, beginning and end, Abhyasa, repetition, Apurvata, uniqueness, Arthapatti is eulogy or praise, Upapatti is reasoning, and Phalam, result. Don't look bemused, I'm going to explain very quickly each of them. The first one is Upakrama Upasanghara, which means beginning and end. Any text, if you look at the beginning, not literally the first sentence, but how say of speech. So the beginning, what is said in the beginning and what is said in the end. You will find a statement of purpose there in the beginning and a kind of conclusion at the end. If you put them together, it gives you a fair idea of what was said. So beginning and end. Take a look at the beginning and end of the text. Second thing you need to do is, remember what we are doing here is trying to find the meaning of the whole text. The second thing you need to do is abhyasa. Abhyasa here means repetition. Note in the whole text, what's the point being repeated? There's something being repeated. Listen to a politician's text, you will notice point being repeated is vote for me, vote for me, vote for me. That's the point of the whole speech. So you know what is being repeated, that points out what the person wants to say. If you look at the Chandogya Upanishad 6th chapter, you'll find one sentence is repeated 9 times. Can you tell me what's that sentence? Tattvamasi, yes, that thou art, 9 times, the same sentence repeated. Oh, you say, aha, repetition. This must be the point of the whole text, that thou art. Then the third thing is apurvata, unique message. What is the one thing you find in the text which you generally don't find elsewhere? That must be the point. That must be what the author or authors are trying to say. So the unique message in Vedanta, for example, is the identity of Jiva and Brahman. You are the absolute. That's the unique message. Then the fourth component of this hermeneutical machine is called Arthapatti. Arthapatti literally means eulogy or praise. Something is praised here. Something is advertised here. Something is promoted here. If you do this, all sorts of wonderful things are going to happen to you. All suffering will be eradicated and you will attain to ultimate bliss. This is the highest of all knowledge. This is the knowledge revealed by God to the rishis, Brahma Vidya is the highest, or the foundation of all knowledge, highest knowledge. So this knowledge is praised above all. What is this knowledge? Again, that identity of Jiva and Brahman. If it is praised, then that must be the point of the whole exercise. Praise. What is being praised here? And then the fifth component is upapatti. Upapatti means argument. You will find in any talk, lecture, there is a chain of reasoning. Follow the reasoning. Arguments are given. So where is the argument leading? What are they trying to prove? So you will find in all the Upanishadic statements and all the texts, arguments which tend to prove that you are that existence, consciousness, bliss. It's taking you that way. If you follow the argument, you will see the point of the whole text. So notice the arguments, the reasoning given in the texts. And sixth, phalam, result. Look at the result. What is promised? What's the result of all of this? You are liberated, moksha, you go beyond suffering, attain bliss. The cycle of birth and death comes to an end. So what is being taught here? It must be that highest liberating knowledge. So you have a 6 components of a machine to extract, like to extract juice out of a mango. You have a machine. Similarly, here's a hermeneutical machine which extracts the juice out of the text, which tells you basically what the meaning is. It's using this hermeneutical machinery that a classical scholar of Vedanta will try to arrive at a conclusion. What conclusion do they arrive at? First stage of Vedantic that practice, hearing, Shravana, is what is the point of all these texts? Using all this, we come to an understanding that all the Upanishads, all the Vedantic texts, they all come down, whatever they are saying, they're full of stories and examples and reasoning practices. All of them, they come down to one thing. They're saying only one thing. That thou art. Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. This very self is Brahman. This consciousness within us, it is the ultimate reality. The Mahavakyas, they're called profound sentences because they sum up the entire Vedantic teaching. So this is the conclusion of the first stage. What is the conclusion of the first stage? When you have ascertained the meaning of the teachings. You've heard it all, you've studied it all, now you know what they mean. You say, oh, Swami, that's so simple, done. I agree. It's that thou art is the meaning. That's because you've been given the end product. Suppose you are given all those books and show me, if a scholar says, there are so many examples here, how do they all point to that? There are so many contradictory statements here. Some seem to talk about a dualism. Dva Suparna Sayuja Sakhaya. Mundaka Upanishad says there are two birds sitting on the same tree, the higher bird and the lower bird, the famous allusion. But notice, two, not one. So how does this lead to your grand conclusion that it is all one, you are the same Brahman? So you must know, then the whole thing must be studied properly to see how these things fit in. At what stage do they fit in? Often the teachings build up to a climax. So if you take one out of context, it means just the opposite of what they are trying to say. For example, Annamaya Atma, Atman is the body. What? He's just saying all the time the self is pure consciousness. No, the Taittiriya Upanishad clearly says it. Then how do you reconcile that you are Brahman? It's supposed to say you are existence, consciousness, bliss, but the Upanishad directly says you are the body. But then you have to put it in context. If you know the whole process, you will say, wait a minute, let's read through it. It says you are the body. Next it says you are the prana. Next it says you are the mind. Next it says you are the intellect. After that it says you are beyond the intellect, the Anandamaya. So what is it doing there? It's the finger pointing at the moon. Step by step. Inner and inner. Subtler and subtler. It's pointing towards something which cannot be directly revealed by words. So it's taking it step by step like any good teacher. From the gross to the subtle. From the near to the far. From the known to the unknown. That's how it's moving. So in this way one must know how to interpret the Vedantic scriptures. All culminating in the understanding that all the scriptures are finally telling me that I am Brahman. That's the point. I mean, there are a lot of things to consider. Bhagavad Gita, you take up the text like the Bhagavad Gita. There are teachings about meditation there. There are teachings about bhakti there. There are teachings about ethics and morality there. There are teachings about food and exercise and relaxation. There are teachings about being balanced and what constitutes good and evil, what constitutes a demonic nature and a godly nature. So what is the point of the Gita? Which one is the point? All those teachings is a mass of wisdom. Really, you can take a lot of things out of it. You can take things which are related to health. You can take things related to management. Is Gita for management now? So is Gita a management text? Is Gita a health manual? No. This first step, Shravana tells you, if you systematically study it, all of those are there. They're there. There's wonderful stuff to be learned there. But all of them finally culminate in the knowledge that you are Brahman. That I am Brahman. That's the point of the whole thing. Why is this bothering me? Okay. The first step is completed when you can confidently say, I know the point of the scriptures, the texts, the teachings. The point is, I am Brahman. That's what they're telling me. So, now what remains? What remains is, after this comes, now I know the teachings. I can say what the teachings are. What the book tells me, what Shankaracharya tells me, what the Upanishads and Gita tell me, I can tell you. This is the sum and substance of the teaching. But I have doubts. I have doubts. So the first doubt is called, I have there are obstacles to realization. The first obstacle is called asambhavana. Impossibility obstacle. Impossibility obstacle. What is impossibility obstacle? It means that it doesn't seem possible. I am obviously this limited person, this body, mind. How am I pure consciousness? How am I, whatever this pure being is, how am I that pure being? It doesn't seem possible. So this is called asambhavana. And now you enter the second stage, which is called mananam. Mananam means reasoning or reflecting, cogitation. What you do in this stage is yukti. This is called shruti anukula yukti tarka. That means reasoning which helps the conclusions of the teachings. The teachings we have already got, reasoning to point out the conclusions, to support the conclusions. Basically, if the student says, I don't understand, now the teacher has to say, what is it that you don't understand? Let's break it down. Which point are you getting stuck with? Please tell us your question. So this is a place where Q&A, question and answer, you'll find in many of the texts. The usual way in the classical texts were done was a Purva Paksha, an opponent raises a question. And these opponents, some of the questions are commonsensical, some are grammatical, for example, but most of the opponents, they come from other schools of philosophy. They were profound thinkers in ancient India, many of whom profoundly disagreed with non-dualism. I remember I studied one of the schools which is a sworn enemy of the non-dualists, an ancient enemy going back 2,000-3,000 years, 2,000 more years, the school of the logicians, the Naiyayikas. And I got the opportunity to study. There was a scholar visiting Calcutta in the Asiatic Society, Professor V.N. Jha. He offered courses. So 3 courses, 15 days each. Each day about 5 hours of logic. At a stretch. If you think you have got it difficult here, you should have attended that. One of those courses was, I kid you not. One of those, the subject of one of those courses was nothing. Abhava, absence, nothing. And we talked about nothing for 5 hours a day for 15 days. And the example he used, we would start off with is, of course, none other than our familiar clay pot. So he would start off, the scholar Pandit would come and write on the board painstakingly, Bhutale ghato nasti, there is no pot on the table. And this is the sentence we analyzed for 5 hours a day for 15 days. There is no pot on the table. And there was this guy who is to open the hall in the Asiatic Society where the classes were on, like a caretaker, old gentleman who was working there. He would listen to this. And one day he approached me. I think he found me approachable among all the... They were all big professors and research students and big and fancy folks. So he was comfortable. He came and said, Swami, if you really want a pot, I can get it for you. He actually said, I'm not making it up. He sort of shyly and diffident. He felt it's his responsibility. He's responsible for the classroom. And if it has a projector and things like that, and and if it lacks a pot, well, that's easily remedied. He can get a pot. He can get a pot for you. You guys are complaining every day that there's no pot on the table. And this scholar who taught us, this is called the New School of Logic, Navya Nyaya. You might have heard of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the great teacher of Bhakti in Bengal. He started off as a scholar of Navya Nyaya, the New School of Logic. The New School of Logic, remember, this is India. So the New School of Logic is 1,000 years old. It started in a place called Mithila in Bihar in about 1000 AD. So my point there is, so the professor would teach us, and one day, because I was there, a non-dualist monk, so he said, I love reading Shankara, but I can't understand him. So his point of view is entirely this Navya, the Nayayika point of view, the logician's point of view, which is a realist, pluralist point of view, more or less as we see the world. So these different philosophers, very complex. If you think Advaita is difficult, you should see some of these things are extraordinarily sophisticated, extraordinarily complex. Swami Vivekananda mentions about this school in Complete Works of Vivekananda. He says the Indians developed the most complex and subtle system of logic known to humanity until the advent of course, modern symbolic logic and all is more sophisticated mathematical logic. I can tell you, I've studied Greek Aristotelian logic, I've studied Navya Nyaya. Not a patch. Aristotle is kindergarten strictly compared to these guys. Extraordinary. And Vivekananda himself says it's enough to make your head spin. It is. Now, these were the kind of opponents that the non-dualists had. And so they would raise, in the stage of mananam, reflection, they would raise objections. Objection from the Nyaya point of view, objection from the Sankhya point of view, objection from the Mimamsa point of view, objection from the Buddhist point of view, and there would be at least 4 major schools of Buddhism with each different approach. From the Jaina point of view, from the materialist point of view, from the grammarian's point of view. So once you go through this process, all your questions, and I literally mean it, all your questions, and many more questions which you would have never had thought of, those are raised and answered. I remember once I was standing in front of our main monastery talking to one of my teachers, Swami Sarvapriyananda, after the Vedanta class, and I was a newcomer, a novice, and I sort of diffidently asked the Swami. I thought maybe he'll be offended if I ask questions. So I said, Swami, I've got some questions if you don't mind. He said, ask away. Better minds than yours have been thinking up questions for 1,000 years, and they have all been answered. There's nothing that you can think about which has... and if you can think of something new from a point of view of modern science or something, then that's also welcome. Think about it and ask questions. Whatever you can think of, whatever question you can generate, and discuss it. Books and books have been written. These are dialectical works, very advanced works. Books like Khandana Khanda Khatya. They are called the cupcakes of refutation. Khanda Khatya means sweets, pastries. The pastries, the delicacies of refutation. So they enjoyed it. You think that's the hard work? No. They loved it. All these discussions. So it's supposed to be... I cannot go on because the time limits me, but they're wonderful stories, each of these books. The Khandana Khanda Khatya is supposed to be the toughest work of non-dual Vedanta ever written. And it was written by Sri Harsha, a great philosopher in around the 10th century. The story goes that I think his dad was beaten by a Nayayika. His father was a non-dualist scholar, but he was defeated in debate by, obviously he didn't do his homework, so he was defeated in debate by a logician belonging to this other school I mentioned, Nyaya school. And I think he committed suicide or something like that. And so Sri Harsha wanted to take revenge. And so the only problem, to defeat the other philosophers, the only problem was he was dumb. So he knew he stood no chance against anybody at all. So what he did was, he, instead of trying to study and, he prayed to the Divine Mother. And he prayed and prayed and prayed, and the story goes, the Divine Mother appeared before him. What do you want? Make me so super intelligent and let me be smarter than anybody else in the world so I can defeat all of them. So make me super intelligent. That's what he asked for. Be careful what you ask for. The Divine Mother said, let that be so. True. And he became super intelligent. But now the problem was, he was so intelligent and so sharp. It was like comparing, say, a calculator to an AI supercomputer or something like that, So what he was saying, nobody understood what he was saying. Now, you can't beat me unless I understand you've beaten me. So it was very frustrating, for this super intelligent kid. So he went back to the Divine Mother and said, no, this is not quite what I meant. Can you step it down a little bit? I still want to be able to beat everybody, but not so much. Then the Divine Mother said, all right, and this is all stories, nice stories, she said, go and eat this. There's something called a particular lentil, colloid dal. It's supposed to increase tamas in your body. So that's why I've seen novices and monks hesitate to eat that when it's provided. It's supposed to make you a little sleepy and dull and sort of tune it down a little bit. Have a lot of that. And then there's a particular berry she mentioned, a creeper. Sit under that. It's supposed to be intoxicating. So you sit under that. Then write your magnum opus, your book you're going to write. And so then he wrote the Khandana Khanda Khatya, which is the tuned down, stepped down variety of what he was trying to do. And that is still today the toughest book that you can ever come across. And there's a translation of just a couple of passages of that. It's a huge translation in English by Professor Phyllis Granoff, who lives here. Yeah, she lives here, I think, in San Diego. I think so. Yes. So she went to India, studied under a traditional scholar, and one story leads to the other. My Nyaya teacher, whom I studied the school of 15 days of nothing. So He studied under the same teacher under whom Phyllis Granoff studied. Imagine a scholar, this is the beauty of the traditional scholars in India, a scholar who's teaching two completely opposed systems of philosophy. Not at the basic level, at the highest, what we might call the research level, post-PhD level, to two different people. Imagine the mastery over the systems of this scholar, and there were many of such scholars, fewer now, but there are many such scholars, who mastered all of them, mastered at the highest level. And so it's called Argument in Late Vedanta, Phyllis Granoff. If you want to fry your brain, that's a book. No, I'm joking, it's not fry your brain. She has done a wonderful job. But imagine, two passages. For that you need a book this thick to explain it. With diagrams and modern logic and everything.
What is it called?
Argument, No, you can take a look. It gives you an idea. Argument in late Vedanta. I think tradition and argument in late Vedanta. Argument in late Vedanta. Phyllis Granoff, Granoff. That's Khandana Khandakadya. So what I'm saying is this is part of the second stage, Mananam. You don't have to go through all that. But just tell us what your problems are. So that what your problems are with this teaching, so that if those are solved, you can say confidently, when is the second stage over? When is it over, the reasoning for you? When you can say, stage 1, I know the teaching. Stage 2, I get it now. I'm convinced. I'm convinced. I don't have doubts. I have clarity now. I begin to see what they are talking about. Intellectually, yes, certainly, intellectually. That's it, intellectually. That is Mananam, second stage. I must mention here a deep idea, a much deeper idea of Mananam. This thing has been given by Shankaracharya in his commentary on the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Just for the sake of completion, but it's an important point that he makes. I haven't found it in other places. The point he makes is, this is not Mananam. In the Brihadaranyaka, the words used are Pandityam, Balyam, Maunam. Instead of saying hearing, reasoning, meditating, in the Upanishad, the words used are scholarship. The next word is strange. Balyam literally means childlike. Childlike. Youth. Childlike. And then the third one is silence. Silence and meditation, they match. Scholarship and hearing, the first stage. But the second one is problematic. What is the second one? Reflecting, reasoning. But the Upanishad says, Balyam. The Sanskrit word Balyam has two meanings. Shankaracharya says, Balasya Bhava, which means being like a child. The other one is Balasya Bhava, the power, strength. And there he says something interesting, which only 1,400 years later you find it reflected back in Vivekananda again. Shankaracharya says there, the second stage consists of struggling to live what you have studied. Not understand it by reasoning. You can understand by reasoning, that's of course necessary, but trying to live up to that. He says, living on the basis of the strength you get from the Upanishadic teachings. And if you try to do that before enlightenment, you're going to struggle. Life, you're going to manifest the virtues, be truthful and fearless and loving, eradicate negative virtues. Because if I'm the Atman, then if I'm pure consciousness, why should I have any negativity? I should manifest existence and awareness and oneness. Try to do that. It's basically the struggle saints, spiritual seekers in all traditions go through. This is the second stage, he says. After this, he says, when some maturity comes at this stage, then meditation comes. And he calls it silence, Maunam. Alright, moving on to meditation now. So why meditation? Now you know the teaching, now you've got clarity about the teaching. Maybe you have tried to live up to the teaching also. So what else remains? At this point also people will say, and we hear it again and again after Advaita teachings, I understand what you are trying to say, but it's still a kind of intellectual understanding. It doesn't seem to be a living realization. I don't seem to feel like I am a Jivan Mukta, enlightened, I am a Buddha, I am a Vivekananda or Raman Maharshi. I don't feel that. It seems to be a huge gap. What is this gap? I am not enlightened yet. What remains? So the third, there are two kinds of obstacles I said. First obstacle, impossibility. Second obstacle, contrary tendencies. Contrary tendencies. In Sanskrit, viparita bhavana. Contrary tendencies. Lifelong and many lives long habit of behaving and thinking that I am a body mind. Reacting to the world as if I am a body mind. Facing the problems of life as if I am a body mind. Though now there is a problem because I know, I have heard and I have understood now, I am not body mind. I am clear about it now. I have clarity. And yet I continue to behave as if I am a body mind. And that leads to suffering. I don't feel that I am the absolute pure consciousness, not the body mind. So to convert the clarity already gained into full-blown realization, look at the word realization, it becomes real to me. What I understand is now real to me. That is the purpose of meditation. Swami Vivekananda called it assimilation. He says, again and again, I am that, I am that, I am he said, Soham, I am that, until it tingles with every drop of your blood. It becomes a living reality for you. Not brainwashing, not positive affirmation. No. This is what you have already understood to be the truth. For you it's a fact. Intellect says, yes, this is so. Now hold on to that fact. Immerse yourself in it. Soak yourself in it. Stay with it until it becomes, yes, obviously, until it becomes undisturbed. That staying with it, soaking it in, absorbing that clarity, assimilating it, meditation. So this is meditation. Now this is the context. This is the context of what we are trying to do. Vedantic meditation or Advaitic meditation is not the same as yogic meditation. There are differences. So one reason I chose this text to talk about is there are very few places where Shankaracharya has discussed meditation in much detail. It's here that he does it in great detail. What he does here is quite remarkable, and that's why it's suitable for this retreat. Because what Shankaracharya does here is, he takes up 15 techniques of meditation, non-dual meditation. 15. But all of the 15, if you look at the names are all borrowed from yoga. They're all yogic names. They're all borrowed from Patanjali Yoga and Hatha Yoga. Why he did that, I don't know. Maybe because those are the common terms for meditation. Any practice of meditation, you would think about those terms. So he took up those names and he changed their meanings completely. So it can be confusing. Be careful. When we are going to go through this, you will find all the words, most of the words are familiar to you. Why are they familiar to us? Because that's exactly what Atma Rupanji told us yesterday. But what Shankaracharya is going to tell us is different. Same term, different meaning. Now, it's important to note, Shankaracharya does not dispute the original yogic meaning. I'll repeat that. Shankaracharya actually does not dispute the original yogic meaning. At the end he will say, I have given you new interpretations, but the old ones stand. Not only do the old ones stand, not only the yogic meanings stand, they have to be practiced also, he says. He says they are all useful. But to move on to non-dualism, these are the new practices. Using the same old terms. Right? So this is one thing to keep in mind. He's not cutting down yogic practices. You ignore the yogic practices at your own peril. The Advaitic, the things he will point out really won't work until some amount of stability and purity is gained. Another thing is why this warning is necessary is, as you will see, Shankaracharya has done this with what I believe is a little bit of mischief. You will see again and again, he is doing a little bit of pulling the leg of the yogi. Yeah, so he is doing a little bit of teasing. This is the meaning of meditation, this is the meaning of silence, this is the meaning of breathing, this is the meaning of asana, and that meaning, by which he means the yogic meaning, is for children. So he will keep saying things like that. But remember, at the end, he will finally own up that all of those are powerful practices and necessary for belief. All right. I haven't started yet. Now I'm going to start. But we don't have to read through all 15 practices, because you will quickly notice there are 15 components as far as the yogic meanings are concerned. All of those terms have different meanings, and a lot of discussion is there in Yoga Sutras and the commentaries on yoga. All these terms are fully discussed, much more detail. And if you think Shankaracharya is going to give 15 meanings here, he is not. You will suddenly realize after reading a few, he is saying the same thing in all 15. He points out Brahman and says, realize you are that. That's the meaning of the whole thing. So let's see. What are the 15 practices? Let me just read out the 15 practices. Yamo hi niyamastyago maunam deshascha kalata asanam moola bandhascha deha samyam cha drikstitihi prana sanyamanam chaiva pratyaharascha dharana atmadhyanam samadhischa proktanyangani vaikramat. Kramat means in sequence. In sequence there are these 15 limbs. You've heard about 8-limbed yoga. So he says 15 limbed angani, 15-limbed yoga. What are these 15-limbed yoga? What are the components? Yama. Same thing what we studied yesterday. Maharaj taught us yama, number 1. Niyama, number 2. So yama and niyama, the moral practices. Tyaga, this is a new one he's introducing. It's not part of the 8-limbed yoga. This is Tyaga means renunciation. Renunciation, giving up. Maunam, practice of silence. Desha, proper place to practice meditation. Kala, number 6, time, proper time for meditation. Asanam, sitting. This is again is back to Patanjali Yoga. 7. Moola bandha. These are, the yoga teachers can tell you better. These are certain locks applied to the muscles in the body, certain parts of the body, which makes your asanas and pranayamas more powerful. Moola bandha. Then 8. 9. Deha samyam, posture of the body. So he's splitting up sitting and posture of the body. Two things. Posture of the body. Sitting, how to sit, asana, and also posture of the body. Deha samyam, evenness in posture of the body. Body posture. 10. Drik sthiti. Where do you keep your eyes? Eyes open, closed, things like that. Drik sthiti. Where do you keep your eyes? You know what he's going to do. The yogis have long discussions. Eyes fully open, eyes closed, eyes on the tip of your nose. There's different practices. Eyes are rolled up there. So many, and there are discussions of the use of each one. If you are feeling sleepy, eyes open, recommended. If you are getting scattered, eyes closed. Halfway, there's so many advantages and disadvantages. There are a lot of discussions about this. Shankara, I can tell you what he's going to say. Keep your eyes on Brahman. That's all. That's just it. That means keep your attention on Brahman. Then that was number 10. 11. Prana sangyamanam. That means pranayama, breathing. Pratyahara, withdrawal, which Swami is going to tell us soon. Pratyahara, withdrawal. Dharana, focus. Dhyanam, atmadhyanam, dhyanam, meditation. And 15. Samadhi. These are all from yoga. Some from Patanjali Yoga and some from Hatha Yoga terms. So they are all taken. Now what does he do with them? So how much time do I have? For the talk and then Q&A. Okay, we'll go into Q&A afterwards. Yeah. So did somebody ask something? Yeah. So those are the 15 limbs. Yes. The what? Aparokshanubhuti. From verses 102 to almost the end, 144, he goes on about Vedantic meditation. Quickly, let me go through what he does. So yama, for example, and we know what yama is. First recall the original meaning. Without knowing the original meaning, this will not make sense. What is the original meaning of yama? Non-violence, ahimsa. We read it yesterday. Satya, truth. Tell me. Brahmacharya, sense control or celibacy. Aparigraha, non-acceptance of gifts. Asteya, non-stealing, not taking what is not one's own. So the fundamental moral practices which prepare the mind for meditation. Without this, meditation is not possible. So, what does Shankaracharya do with this? Sarvam brahmeti vijnanat indriyagrama sanyama yamo yam iti samprokto abhyasaniyo muhurmuhu. When the clarity comes inside and outside, all is Brahman. With that clarity, stabilizing yourself in that clarity, the sense organs are automatically controlled. What you are severally trying to do, truth, the non-violence, celibacy, the non-acceptance of gifts, non-stealing, all of that, they all come automatically when you realize it is one reality inside and outside. What shall I steal? What do I lack if all is Brahman and I am Brahman? If even this conviction is there, I'm not talking about enlightenment, conviction. If it's there, what shall I steal? Whom shall I tell lies to? Whom shall I cheat? Honesty, in your dream. So you are there, and if you realize it's a dream and all the other people are there in your dream, will you try to cheat somebody and be clever and pull a fast one? They're all you. Whom are you going to cheat? Similarly, violence. Praiser praised, blamer blamed are but one. Whom to praise, whom to blame? And when they are one, whom will you hate and whom will you favor above the other? So all of this comes under control when this kind of clarity is there. Stabilize yourself in that and it will all come to you. He says that. Then niyama. Niyama we know. Again tell me. Shaucha, cleanliness, internal and external. Then santosha, contentment. And then swadhyaya, repetition of the sacred texts or study, and study. And then the Ishvara, then this tapas, austerity, and Ishvara pranidhana. That means surrender to God. What does he say? Sajatiya pravahascha vijatiya tiraskritihi niyamo hi paranando niyamat kriyate buddhihi. He's punning here. So, what he says is, make an effort to keep up the continuous flow of this awareness, I am Brahman. Sajatiya means of the same awareness, same vritti, one after another. I am Brahman. I am the witness consciousness. Chidananda Rupaha Shivoham. They all mean the same thing. Keep that up. Vijatiya tiraskritihi. The other thing, I am body-mind. That kind of thinking, behaving, speaking, try to give up. This continuous practice, this is called niyama. So he replaces all the other practices with this. See how he internalizes the whole thing. And this is niyama. Niyama also in Indian languages, Sanskrit and other Indian languages, niyama means, you know what it means? Rules. Rules. The moment you hear rules, you feel, oh, it's so boring. And so when you're given a practice, the immediate reaction of most people is, how long do you have to do it? He says, niyamo hi parananda. It is full of bliss. It's fun. Don't think, how long do I have to keep? Do you ever ask if the the teaching is go out and have fun? Do you ask how long do I have to have fun? No. So it is fun. Niyamo hi parananda, to remain in this. See, once a clarity comes, just remaining in that clarity is greatly joyful. So his niyamo is parananda. That means it's productive of great bliss. Niyamat kriyate buddhehi. The wise ones, they do this consistently. They maintain this awareness consistently. Ramana Maharshi was famous. Who am I? So whatever problem you go to Ramana Maharshi with, he will direct you back to the self, right? So does God exist? If you ask, he will say, who is asking? Find out who am I. My mind is scattered. How to concentrate my mind? Meditation. But you know what Ramana Maharshi would say? Whose mind? Who's the one who's saying my mind is scattered? Find out that one. So it's a very easy method to say, whatever you problem you bring is a simple formula, who am I? So one person came to Ramana Maharshi and said, I don't like that method. Now Ramana Maharshi is in trouble. What's it called? A one-trick pony or something? Yes. One-trick pony. So, I don't like that method. I am a devotee of Vishnu, of the Lord. I love God, Vishnu. Is that all right? And he went it respectfully. Ramana Maharshi said, yes, it's all right. Oh, it's all right. Yes. So after I die, will I go to Vaikuntha, heaven, the heaven of Vishnu, the abode of Vishnu? Will I go to heaven where God dwells? Ramana Maharshi said yes. Oh really? He didn't expect that from Ramana Maharshi, you know. He expected to be scolded and said, find out who wants to go to heaven. So, yes, you will go to heaven. And will I see Vishnu there? Yes, you will. Oh, I'll see God there. Yes. And will Vishnu see me? Yes, he will. He'll see me. Yes, he will. Will Vishnu speak to me? Will God speak to me? Yes, he will. And what will he say to me? He'll say, find out who I am. So this continuous inquiry into who I am, he says, this is niyama. Yeah, time up. Now, I'll do one more. Tyaga. Renunciation. The third one. Renunciation is becoming a monk, giving up the world. So the way it is understood traditionally in India is, spiritual seekers, they become monks in the sense, monks or nuns, they give up worldly relationships, they give up possessions, they give up money and all worldly possessions. They go off to forests and mountain caves and meditate and things like that. And so that's becoming a monk. So when we become monks, so this color is a sign of being a monk, whether it's for us or Buddhist monks. Jain monks wear white. So it means, and in Christianity you have the Catholic tradition of monasticism. You have the early desert fathers just at the beginning of Christianity. The Eastern Orthodox Church has a very rich monastic tradition and an ascetic tradition also. So ascetics and monks is what is meant by Tyaga, traditionally. I'm going to say what Shankaracharya said, but I will wait for the change of the thing because that is an interesting thing. Alright. So this is Tyaga, becoming a monk, giving up all worldly pursuits. And some people ask, so do you have to become a monk for being a spiritual seeker? And the answer is yes and no. No, because you don't actually obviously have to become a monk, put on the robes and go off to a monastery. Then it wouldn't be possible for anybody except monks. And that's not true. We see across the religions, across every tradition, including our own Vedantic tradition, including the Ramakrishna Vivekananda tradition, so many people, householders, people in the world, they were spiritually enlightened. They got enlightenment. In the Bhagavad Gita, neither Krishna nor Arjuna is a monk. So the teacher and the student, they are householders. Many of the original teachers of the Upanishads were householders, were married people. So it's not necessary that you have to actually physically become a monk outside, externally. But yes, in the sense, internally one must become monk-like. Monk-like. So, my God, what does that involve? Nothing more than what you're doing right now. Spending a perfectly good weekend listening to Vedanta teachings. That's what monks do. So, yes, this is becoming monk-like. Giving up worldly pursuits and taking up spiritual pursuits. That's becoming internally monk-like. So that is the idea of Tyaga, renunciation. What does Shankaracharya do with it? He says, 106, verse number 106, Tyaga. Tyaga prapancha rupasya chidatmatva valokanat tyago hi mahatam pujya sadyo moksha mayo yataha. He says, renunciation is renunciation of the entire universe. You renounce the entire universe. How do you do that? How do you renounce the universe? When we are in the universe, you see it as Brahman. Chidatmatva avalokana. Realize it as pure consciousness, which is nothing other than you, the self. You are the only reality in this universe. When you realize that, that is renunciation. It really doesn't matter whether you are a monk or a householder, man or woman, king or pauper, whatever it is. It's absolutely immaterial. How do you do that? So this is where I tell one of my favorite Vedantic stories. Listen carefully. You might have heard it already, but it's a well-known story in the Himalayas. It's the story of the Princess of Kashi. In ancient India, in a kingdom, in the court of the king, there was a play being staged. And one of the characters in the play was the Princess of Kashi. She was a little girl and she was a character in the play. Who's going to dress up as the little Princess of Kashi? So the queen in that court, the queen said, we can dress up the prince. He was a little kid, 5 years old. So you can dress him up as a little girl and he'll play the Princess of Kashi. And that's what was done. The prince was dressed up as the Princess of Kashi and he played the role. And he looked so cute that his mother, the queen, said to the court painter, paint a portrait of him in this dress. So today it would be so easy, like a selfie or something. But they painted a portrait of him in the dress as Princess of Kashi, titled it The Princess of Kashi, dated and so on and so forth. Years passed. 15 years later, the prince was quite grown up and he was doing his princely things, like riding and shooting arrows and studying to being the king and so on and so forth. One day he was exploring the palace, old warehouses and unused cellars. So he went into this underground cellar looking at old stuff. And he found this painting and he wiped the dust off it and he saw this little girl, and it said Princess of Kashi and the date. And he said, this was 15 years ago. She's like my age, so she must be my age, quite grown up now. And he fell in love with her. And he said, she is the one for me. I will not marry unless I marry this Princess of Kashi. But he was shy. He couldn't tell his mother, the queen, or his father, the king, but he moped and he didn't attend his classes, and so his father noticed and his mother noticed, but they couldn't make head or tail of it. What's wrong with the prince? What ails him? Finally, the wise old minister takes the prince aside and says, Prince, you can confide in me. Tell me, what is your, why are you unhappy? So the prince sort of shyly says, I am in love. Minister says, good. Who is she? Oh, she is the Princess of Kashi. The minister says, a princess. Wonderful. Even better. Where did you see her? I haven't actually seen her, but I have seen her painting. And it's an old painting, but from the date I can see that she is my age. So anyway, she's a princess and she's my age and I love her and I just want to marry her. The minister said, old painting, Princess of Kashi. Wait a minute, where did you see this? In the cellar? Can you take me there? So the prince takes the minister there and the minister sees the painting and he says, Prince, you need to sit down. This is not the Princess of Kashi. Oh, whoever she is, I'll marry her. He tells the whole story of the play and how the little prince was dressed up as the Princess of Kashi and the portrait was made 15 years ago and here is this portrait. It's not the Princess of Kashi, that thou art. Now the question is, what happened to the desire of the prince? It evaporated. The desire for the Princess of Kashi evaporated. The important question is why? Because he couldn't marry the Princess of Kashi, that's why there was no desire? Or because she was already married and it's too late? Or because she's dead or something like that? No! Because he realized there is no Princess of Kashi apart from him, there never was. What seems to be an entirely different person and desirable is he himself. This world is our Princess of Kashi. anything that you find attractive in this world. Swami Vivekananda says, the world is dead in itself. We breathe life into it and then we run towards it or run away from it.
Power.
So this is the princess of Kashi. As witness consciousness, you realize everything in this universe is just you yourself. As everything, every person in your dream is nothing but you. Everybody here is you. Everything is you. The real witness consciousness, the existence consciousness. From that perspective, what desire? The moment you think about that, that is renunciation of the universe. There is no need to change your robes and go off to a monastery. That steadiness in that perspective, moksha, that is freedom. Sadhyo moksha, how will I get enlightenment and freedom? Right now, right here, forever. Just take that perspective, it's done. Tyago hi mahatam pujya. It is respected and worshipped by the wise, this kind of renunciation, because it leads to instant enlightenment and release. All your problems solved forever at one stroke. I'll stop so that you can ask questions. Yes, at the back there, already. And then in the front. Last ability to give you a chance.
Maharaj, if there's others that sometimes want to ask, sometimes the same people asking, so if there's others, maybe also.
I know, that's why I said here. Please ask the question.
Hello, Swamiji. So I'm new to this spiritual person. So one question that I have is there in the pursuit of Advaita?
New to the pursuit, and you start off with Advaita Vedanta, my God. All right. Yes.
Is there like a proverbial glass ceiling in the pursuit of Advaita? The reason I say that is there have been very few instances of like women being monks or being in monastic life. Is that more because the form that gives birth to new life is already comes with strings attached and cords? It's harder for them to see, or maybe is it just like a patriarchy?
It is true. You're right. There are few instances it's true because it was a patriarchal society. In all religions across the world, in all cultures, are basically patriarchal. So you would find most of the teachers are men. Most of the teachings seem to be tailored for men, and even for monks or for say for example Brahmins. So things like that. They were patriarchal societies, hierarchical societies. But the beauty of Advaita is it's impersonal. It is gender neutral. We're talking about something which is exactly the same in men and women. Or other genders. In New York we have 31 genders. No, really. You Google it, you'll find it. And if you laugh at that, you are bad people. You are not allowed to do that. But from the Advaitic perspective, it's one consciousness. Absolutely no problem with gender there.
Yeah, okay, this is left over from yesterday. The microphone working?
Yeah, speak like this though. Yeah.
Like this?
Perfect.
Can you hear me better?
Yes.
Okay, this is a question left over from yesterday. It has to do with using metaphors for explanation in relation to superimposition. So we had three metaphors to explain superimposition. There was the water in the ocean, there was the clay in the pot, and there was the snake and the rope. And one was regarded as a superimposition and the other was regarded as a real thing. So it looks like we're okay because I see you nodding.
Yeah.
But my problem is this. They're all superimpositions.
What?
The snake and the rope are both superimpositions. The water and the wave are also superimpositions. And so is the clay and the pot. They're all superimpositions.
Do you mean that the snake is superimposed on the rope and the rope is superimposed on Brahman?
No, what I mean is I'm left in a state of difficulty because being somewhat scientifically oriented, I understand that the universe as we understand it now is a holistic quantum field. It's a self-aware universe. So I don't really disagree with Vedanta teaching. I've been on board with it for years and years. And I understand that when you use metaphors, they have both a revealing and a concealing aspect. So the power of this metaphor is pointing to a truth, but the falsity of it is both aspects of each of those three metaphors are superimposition. My question is, what's your comment about that?
My question to you is, snake is obviously superimposition on the rope in the example, but you're saying the rope is also superimposition. It's a superimposition on what?
Reality.
That's what I'm asking you. That's what I first said. Are you saying that the rope is a superimposition on Brahman, on the reality?
Yes, sir.
Right. That is true. But then the example is meant to point that out. The three levels of truth. Absolute, which is reality, Brahman. The transactional, which is this which we are inhabiting. And the level of illusion and error, which is snake, a dream, a mirage, things like that. So the illusory level is superimposed on the transactional level. The transactional level is a superimposition on Brahman. To understand that the things of this world are superimpositions, the reality is Brahman. To understand that, an example is given. An example must be something. After all, what's an example? An example must be something on which we both agree. If I say the world is a superimposition on Brahman, you will say, no, it is not. But if I say a snake is a superimposition on the rope, you'll have to say yes. We all agree on that, right? It's not a real snake, it's a mistake. That's what I'm trying to say. This word is a mistake. That's why an example is used. That's the point of an example. I'm not trying to say that the rope is real. I'm not trying to say that the ocean is real, or water is real. I'm not trying to say that the clay is real. I'm trying to say clay, rope, water, these are all superimpositions on Brahman. Just like snake and waves and pots are superimpositions in clay, water and rope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now,
But there's one important
I have
point.
a quick follow-up, which is, we say that the world is in us. Swami Vivekananda, you just quoted him a minute ago, was saying something to the effect, the world is in us. And the question is, human beings have been around for about 80 to 100,000 years. Hominids have been around for 4.5 million years. So in what sense can you possibly mean that prior to the existence of humans?
What is the us is talking about?
I'm not talking about us, I'm asking about the meaning of that statement.
That's what I'm saying. What word is in us? When Swami Vivekananda says
That's
what
what
is
I'd like to know.
all right.
That's the point of the question.
Right. So that's the point of the whole retreat. Us here means existence, consciousness, bliss. Your hominids and the Neanderthals and before that the chimps and whatever, did they exist or not? You say yes, they existed. What Vedanta would say is they are existence with those particular names and forms. What you are talking about is the evolution of nature. Swami Vivekananda said the nature evolves and reveals the underlying reality. Brahman is more and more revealed or manifested. A manifestation of Brahman and evolution of nature. In Sanskrit, Prakriti Parinama and Brahma Vivarta. Brahman is appearing in this form. And within the appearance, a process of evolution is going on. From one-celled creatures to sophisticated beings, and then to the destruction of the universe again, and back to the beginning of the universe. All this is happening in the level of appearance, at the level of the movie. The reality is being or existence or consciousness. The reality is the screen on which the movie is playing. That's what is being said.
So it requires a shift in identification from the personal to Brahman.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's the point of the whole thing.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay, next part.
Yesterday evening we spoke about the nice bhakta who prepared for the rotis and everything for when we visited the place in the Himalayas, Tapavan. She was a dualist, right? Complete a bhakta. And in the end you mentioned that she saw Gopala everywhere. Now how does that happen? How come somebody who's a bhakta sees a non-dual universe. How does that happen from a bhakta to a total non-dualist?
She would not call it non-dualism, but the fact is she sees God in everybody. If Gopala is within me, then within everybody also Gopala is there. And Swami Vivekananda says, if you cannot see God in everything, start with seeing God in one thing. That is in your favorite form, in your particular image or in a particular visualization. And the next you see it in everything. Yeah.
Thank you.
Please get the microphone there and come back.
Thank you, Swamiji.
If you're asking that can a bhakta get non-dual realization? The answer is yes. Answer is yes. The bhakta may not want it, but the bhakta may get non-dual realization. Bhakta may want to taste sugar rather than becoming sugar.
Swamiji, thank you. So in this, if you have the understanding and it's firm and all that, then really your life is just what Shankara is saying, is just constantly contemplate, immerse yourself. And there's no, you talk about these different stages, and I think sometimes they become things that are set up. You've got to reach this stage and then this other stage. But what I'm hearing you say today is that just the immersion is so much fun, to see Brahman everywhere, to keep contemplating this reality. And that's really all you have to do for the rest of your life, right?
No, not for the rest of your life. Okay. Remember, this is the third stage, the stage of meditation. And there's a verse towards the end. He says, keep on doing it till it becomes natural and undisturbed. After that, he says, give it up, don't do it anymore. What's your name?
My name is Anu.
Anu. So how many hours a day do you practice being Anu? You're established in being Anu. It's a reality for you. You don't have to make any effort for it. But this one requires a little bit of effort. And why does it require effort? If you are Brahman, why does it require effort at all? Remember, what was the purpose of meditation in Advaita Vedanta? To overcome
Nations of mind.
I mentioned it. No? Yes, assimilating and immersing yourself in it. But what was the problem? Why does Anu not need to assimilate herself in being Anu? Doubt was the second problem. Third one?
Body, mind, always.
Yes. There's a contrary tendency. I mentioned it. There are two kinds of obstacles. One obstacle is doubt, for which you need the second stage, reasoning it out, thrashing it out, and trying to live according to it. The second obstacle is this contrary tendencies, behaving continuously as a body mind, because of the past samskaras, past conditioning. That is undone. That is erased by this new understanding. If you immerse yourself in what you have understood already and live accordingly, that is the third stage. But once that is done, it's not that the enlightened persons, Ramakrishna or Ramana Maharshi or anybody else, is spending their whole life practicing being Brahman, or I am Brahman, or practicing that I have to give up all desires by seeing God in everything. That's done for them. So there's a time when you drop this also. One last question. Thank you. One last question. Yeah, this time.
As a human, we have a rational intellect and a discriminating intellect. That's what we have a question: who am I? Where I'm coming from? What is my purpose? But as per our scripture, we are taking billions of birth after birth. If I'm going to the different species, I'm taking as a different birth. So how do I realize that? So in this case, I have to come as a human, then only I have to realize, or if I'm going to a different birth, is it possible to do that?
Yeah, you have to come as a human being, and you have to come to the Vedanta Society. And in San Diego. So that is the purpose, that's why it's said. At one level it is true. Human birth is regarded as most valuable. In the traditions which talk about multiple births, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, they all say human birth is most valuable. But it gives you a kind of urgency. Here it is. Or in the Abrahamic traditions, where you talk about this is the life where you have to do it all. It still gives you that urgency, that it has to be done. Again and again the Upanishads say this life is meant for enlightenment. Mahati Vinashti, the Kena Upanishad says, the one who goes away from this world without realizing one's identity with Brahman, that I am that absolute. So great is the loss. Great is the loss.
That urgency again giving more stress. We need to follow these 15 limbs of discipline activities. Is that is possible to done by one line?
By one line? Certainly. Certainly. The yoga says that as we do it intensely, the faster it is. Tivra.
Tivra samveganam asanna.
Tivra samveganam asanna. That means if you intensify your efforts, it will be faster. But you have to do it carefully also. Don't go insane, don't destroy your health. There are those warnings of. There's a beautiful story I read with that. A Zen teacher student comes, an American student. So he goes to this Japanese Zen teacher. So if I practice in this way, how long will it take me to get enlightenment, satori, enlightenment? And the teacher said, if you do everything as I have told you, then it will take you 20 years. 20 years. The student was a young American man. 20 years? So like he's got something to do after that. 20 years? Look, I don't have time to spare for that 20 years. If I'm going to double my efforts, if I do everything twice as much, so many hours I practice put in, then how long is it going to take? The teacher said calmly, 40 years. Thank you very much.